Daniel or Dan. Sorry, I'll make sure I remember. I got to remember that. Welcome to the Send Me podcast. I appreciate you coming out here to talk to me today. I know you have a great story, and I think it's a story that needs to be shared with a lot of people. So I really appreciate you making it out this way.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to jump in and want to find out what your childhood was like, where you grew up. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in the Bay Area, San Lorenzo. I lived with my mother, my father, my sister, who's a year and a half older than me. And then I have an older sister that's 14 years older than me, but she was already married and out of the house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And what, like elementary schools and stuff like that, did you go to?
I went to Lorenzo Manor, and then there was no middle school when I was in elementary school. So we did K through 7 and then went straight from 7th grade right into high school. And then I did 8th through 12th at Arroyo in San Lorenzo.
Awesome. And were you a good student?
I was all the way up until my junior year.
Okay.
Yeah. And then things started to change then.
Oh, got it. Okay. So I'm going to rewind you back, and maybe you can tell me why that happened. Why I'm assuming home life, maybe there was a little restructure there.
Yeah, like I had a really good childhood. My first, I can think back to my first childhood memory. I was 4 after confirming with mom about this memory. There was a birthday party, and I remember a live clown walking in my house, and it scared the hell out of me. So I ran and hid underneath the dining room table because I was like, what the heck is this? I had never seen a clown before.
Yeah.
And my mom said, yeah, that happened. So I know I was 4 at that memory. And my mom did everything for us. She took care of us. She made sure we had everything we needed. So that part of my childhood we were well taken care of by her.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Was mom a stay-at-home mom, or was she working?
So no, my mom worked many jobs. So at that time, when my grandparents were still alive, they owned a restaurant. So they only served lunch at this restaurant. My grandmother and my grandmother's sister were the cooks, and my mom was the waitress, and my grandfather, he would work behind the bar. So she did that during the day, and then at night, she would pack. You see them at Mexican stores, those spices that come in little cellophane packs.
Okay.
She would work at a warehouse in San Leandro packing spices.
Nice.
Yeah. And my dad worked a full-time job at an iron plating company. So she worked 2 jobs just to make sure that we had everything that we needed.
Nice. Okay. And then you said, as you were growing up, you had your 2 sisters, but one was already out of the house. Is that okay? So you and your other sister, the one that was a year older, what was that relationship like?
So we basically grew up together. We did everything together. We helped take care of each other. We played together. We were super close. Still are super close. Our older sister was she kind of helped take care of us when we were super young.
Okay.
But then when she got married and moved out, it was just me and my sister and my mom. As we got older, I would say as I turned 6, the neighborhood we lived in, there was a bunch of children our age that lived in our neighborhood on our street. So my sister had friends, and she would leave and go play with her friends at their friend's house and leave me behind. And that's when things started to get a little different at home. I would stay back with my dad, and my dad, I would start to get a lot more attention from my dad. And to me, I was didn't know any better. Felt like it was it's just love, whatever I thought was love, or what a dad was supposed to be doing at that time. Building this relationship, trusting him, being able to feel safe with him. But then, she would leave, my sister would leave, and then the door would get locked, and then we'd go into his room, and then we'd sit on the bed, and we'd watch TV together, and then that started this this odd relationship to where it led to other things eventually.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's looking back on it now. It's like it's funny looking back on things now. I'm like, I can blame a lot of what I went through and what I did in my life on, oh, this happened to me as a child. But the sexual abuse that I got from my father was exactly just what it was, sexual abuse. And I look at it like I didn't understand what was going on,
Yeah.
but I did partake in it. And because I'm an openly gay man, I questioned it as I got older. Was it something that I enjoyed? Was it something that I looked for because I'm gay? Am I gay because of it?
Yeah.
All this stuff, which I know is not the truth now.
But you're also a young kid, right? So
Yeah.
you don't know how to navigate through that as well.
Yeah,
right?
I just thought it was love. I thought it was like, oh, okay, this is what people do with their dads. And that lasted for about 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 2 years. It would be at the house. He would take me on fishing trips. My dad's avid fisherman, had a boat. I would end up having to go with him. My sister would not want anything to do with it. And it would happen on fishing trips. Yeah. And I was told you can't ever say anything to anybody, your sisters or your mom, because they're not going to believe you. And then if you say something, they're not going to believe you. They're going to be upset with you, and then they're just going to send you away.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, oh. So eventually it stopped. And then I could say now, looking back, that this little kid that I was started building this resentment against my own father, who I started not to like anymore.
Yeah.
But I still wanted his attention. But I would see him physically abuse my mom. And my mom's she's 5'10", and my dad's like 5'6".
Oh, wow.
But it didn't stop him from treating her horribly and putting his hands on her. And I just remember like jumping in the middle and trying to protect my mom.
And how old are you at that time?
Probably like 7, 8.
Wow.
Yeah. But I still wanted his attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then he would tell me, okay, well, you're going to join Little League and you're going to play baseball, and that's the next thing for you. And I said, okay. And then I became like, I started off in T-ball, but he put all this time and effort into me in baseball. And slowly but surely, like all the time and effort he was putting into me, I became better at it.
Yeah.
I became good at it. And I was like this pride and joy for him at San Lorenzo Little League. And I'm thinking, I'm like, oh, like I'm this, like, look what I'm doing. Look at me. My dad's like so happy with me because I'm so good. I'm like on these winning teams and he's coaching. And
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. I'm like, I got this love and attention. But then, I'd come home and I'd hear my mom screaming at him because she would be accusing him of cheating with another mother at the Little League field.
Wow.
And I'd be like, oh, that's why he's doing it.
Yeah. And I know earlier you mentioned that in your junior year, kind of in school, that's when things took a turn. Do you think that those past traumas are what kind of fueled that?
Yeah, yes, for sure. Because like I did really well in school all the way through my sophomore year. I was getting really good grades, college bound. My sister was doing really well in school too. She was doing a lot of sports. I stopped playing sports just despite my father because of what he did when he was at the Little League field with other women. And I'd be like, oh, well, I'm done. And then he transferred his attention to my sister as far as in sports, and she became this amazing softball player. But I quit sports, but didn't focus on school.
Got it.
But when I hit my junior year in high school, I would say end of sophomore year, beginning of junior summertime, I was dealing with sexuality issues, like not knowing, am I gay? Am I bisexual? Am I this? And, knowing I was gay the whole time, but I fit in. I was getting accepted by people because
Yeah.
they were cutting school, and they were like, "Oh, we're going to Brian's house down the street. We're going to go at lunch and not come back."
Yeah.
And then they would start rolling marijuana,
Got it.
and I
Okay.
would be like, "Oh." And I went through DARE, Hugs Not Drugs, and I was like,
Yeah,
I'll never
yeah.
do drugs because I'm Mexican, and I watched growing up, it was just normal for my aunts and my uncles everybody to be drunk
Yeah.
and to drink at parties. And, my grandpa drank all the way until he couldn't, till he got sick. And it was just normal. But for me, I'd be like, that's not what I wanted to do. But then when I found marijuana, I was like, and all these people accepted me.
Yeah.
They didn't care about who they thought I was or who I was pretending to be. And I fit in, and I was like, wow. I'm like,
Yeah.
and I liked the way it felt. Smoking weed opened up so many doors. I remember the first time I used marijuana, I came home I had cut school the rest of the day, and then I walked back home to my house, and my dad was home. And he was sitting in the downstairs family room. He was drinking a glass of milk. And I just remember you could see the bottom of the kitchen from the downstairs family room.
Uh-huh.
And I just walked straight into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator because I had the munchies.
Yeah.
And he came up the stairs and he just looked at me and he said, "Are you loaded? You look high.
He
You smoking
recognized right
weed?"
away. Yeah.
And I was like, "Don't tell mom." And he's like, "Oh, wait till she gets home. Wait till I can't believe this." And I just looked at her, and I just remember waiting for my mom to get home. And when she got home, she just tore into me.
Yeah.
Like, "This is not what you're going to do. This is not what you're going to do. You're not going to be one of these people." And I just thought about it, and I was like, oh, shit.
You're
got
about
caught.
16 about that time?
15.
15.
Yeah,
Okay.
15.
Wow.
But it didn't stop me.
Okay, so I'm going to rewind you again just a little bit. You mentioned that you were struggling with your sexuality, but all along you knew that you were gay. So explain that. So how did you know that? What were the feelings that you were having at that time?
So after the sexual abuse with my father, so that stopped at 8. Like I said, there was a neighborhood full of kids. So what I found myself doing was experimenting with sex with other kids we were all the same age, within a year or two of each other. And it was never with girls. It was always with boys. And these relationships that were friendships were turning into sexual relationships. And I can look back at it now, and it's like people say, "Oh, that's what kids do." No, that's not what kids do. Because I have nieces and nephews now and godsons, and I can't picture them doing what I was doing at 8, 9, and 10 years old.
Yeah.
And knowing that, it felt good. It was with other guys, and I was never attracted to a female, but I was so afraid to be that later in life, I remember being 12 years old and losing my virginity to a female.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it felt wrong. It felt off. It felt like, what the hell?
So it just never felt
Yeah, it never felt
I
right.
got it.
Yeah, and then as I've gotten older, I've looked into it and actually studied it and became more comfortable with who I am and being open about it. I'm like, I was born this way. I didn't choose to be this way.
Yeah.
I was born this way. And then I think being exposed to sex at such a young age, and especially with your own father, it just opened that door because it felt good. And again, it was acceptance. It was love. And all these other kids my age in the neighborhood that were willing to experiment with it at that time. It's like we had this thing that it was, and there was just one other guy. It was maybe 3, 4, 5 other guys in the neighborhood.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
And all around your age?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So that was going to be my next question. You kind of answered it already, but you said you were born with it. So my question was going to be, do you think the stuff that you went through with your father led you to kind of feel a certain way, like this is what men do, two guys are supposed to do? Did any of that thought?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I thought about that. I thought about that because obviously the thought came from somewhere. It's not. It's like I wasn't exposed to porn or anything like that at a young age. I was exposed to my father, who made me feel good by doing what we did, and then taking that feeling or that relationship because it felt right.
Yeah.
And I didn't know any better. I think I've searched for that in friendships at a young age with other guys, where it wasn't always sexual. I had friends that they weren't just friends.
Yeah.
But I would look at relationships that developed into more than just friends as like, oh, this feels right. This is what we should be doing.
Got it.
Yeah. Until I got a little bit older and was told and learned all the slang, like fag, you're queer, you're this, you're that. And then was like, oh, wow, that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I'm
and
gonna get made fun
year?
of.
What year was this roughly?
Oh God, 78, in the late 80s.
Okay.
Yeah. Late
So
80s.
it was definitely different in the 80s than it is now.
Oh, big
right?
time.
You know, it
Oh,
was
yeah,
more
big time.
frowned upon to
It was more
be
like
openly
in the closet.
Yeah, got it. Got it. Yeah. So I can imagine that had to be tough. Were you trying to hide it at that time, or were you still kind of trying to be open about it?
It's like at home around the neighborhood as we grew older, the people in the neighborhood, it was like almost like what you would say, like everybody knew. But then as I got into like the transfer from elementary school to high school, it was more like something I kept under wraps because I was so scared to be looked at differently, ridiculed, beat up, anything like that in high school. Because I was 13 or 14 going into high school.
Yeah.
And then with no middle school in between, just boom, thrown into this big, huge school with all these older kids. And the only person I knew there was my sister because she was a year ahead of me. Yeah. So it was scary because I'm like, I knew I was different. So the easiest way to deal with that was to pretend not to be that.
Got it. And so when you said that your family kind of knew about it, knew about it, what was that like coming out to them, or did you come out to them, or did they just assume?
It was just assumed.
Okay.
It was like it was like the elephant in the room type of thing. My mom would always tell me, "Oh, you're just going through a phase. You're just going through a phase." My grandma would pray over me.
Yeah.
My grandma, when she was she had an altar in her house of saints and everything. She was highly religious. Mm-hmm. She would put my picture on there and pray for me. My dad just wouldn't acknowledge it at all. Or he would acknowledge it. Because growing up with him, because I had such a big resentment against him, his sexual abuse turned into physical abuse probably around 13, 14, where if we were late, we'd get beat by him.
Okay.
If we came home and if he came home from work and dinner wasn't on the table and our chores weren't done, we'd get beat, me and my sister. So we grew up there because my mom was always at work. And then when she would get home, she would save us. It would be we'd be like, we could take a breath.
Yeah.
We could take a breath. Wow, their marriages slowly but surely, well, I would say had been dissolved, but they were still living together. It turned into a very unhappy, unhealthy home. And I sat there and watched my mom struggle to stay in this house with this man who she did not like anymore.
And you think she was doing it for you guys?
Oh, yeah. Back then,
Yeah.
people stayed together for the kids. I do not recommend that because I think that has a lot to do with why I eventually turned to drugs and turned to hanging out with people who did drugs and going down that road. I don't blame my parents for that. That was totally all my choice, my decisions, but it had a lot to do with it.
Got it. That was kind of going to be my next question is, did you start using drugs to kind of disassociate yourself with your past traumas and stuff? Is that how it started?
Yeah, marijuana felt good. Like I tried alcohol when I was younger. We had a full bar in my house and a pool table and all this. My parents' house was a party house for my family. Everything was thrown at my mom and dad's house. But it wasn't, we would have friends over and play pool and make fake drinks or mix all these liquors together, but alcohol was never my thing. So we could have a full bar at my house and we were okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we were getting drunk. But when I found marijuana, I felt so relaxed. I had no cares in the world. I was accepted by this group of kids that didn't care if I was allegedly gay. They weren't looking at any of that. They were like, "Oh, we're going to go smoke. You want to come with us?
Yeah.
Come on." And then that turned into every day.
Okay.
Like I started cutting school every day.
You prefer to be high than be at school.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I really got comfortable and was like, okay, well, let me start buying my own marijuana and rolling it up, and let's smoke when we get to school.
Yeah.
We'll just go off into a corner because we had these, we called them narcs at our high school. They were these security officers on golf carts. They weren't even cops. They were just security guards.
Yeah.
And we would call them narcs, and they'd roll around the campus on their golf carts, but we knew where they would be at. So we would go to opposite places and we would smoke before we'd go into class. And then that just became my norm.
So again, I know I keep rewinding you a little bit, but did anything come about from the abuse that you received from Dad? Did anybody get told about that, or did it ever?
Not until I got older.
Not until you. Okay.
Not until I didn't reveal it until I was 23.
Wow.
I was 23. By then, my mom and dad were divorced. He moved in with his now wife. And him and my mom were going through the divorce. And at that time, I had a boyfriend that was living with me and my mom's home. And he had been through the same thing. And we would talk about it. And he's like, I can't believe you even told your mom. My mom knows. And I would tell him, I'm like, I'm not going to ever tell my mom that. I'm like, I don't want to destroy her. I'm like, it's already going through a lot. I'm like, it's not something I've dealt with it. In high school, I went to counseling for it.
Yeah. You're trying to protect her.
Yeah.
Because at the time, if you were dealing with it, she would, I mean, most parents, like myself, I would feel like I didn't do anything to help you at that time, even though I didn't know, and is that why you were trying to protect her?
Yeah. She was going through a lot because the dividing of assets, the house, all that kind of stuff. She was trying to not lose her house or have to sell her house to give him money for the house. And going through that whole ordeal was a lot. And one day my then boyfriend was like, you just need to talk to her. You just need to talk to her. And it was right in front of her. And she was like, what are you guys talking about? What are you talking? Tell her. And he's like, tell her. You need to tell her what he did to you. And it just came out.
Wow.
And she just lost it.
I can imagine.
Broke down.
Absolutely.
Broke down. And then the cat was out of the bag. And then I had to tell my sisters. And I told them. And, we came together, me and my siblings and my mom. And we talked about it. They apologized for not being there, for not noticing, and of course, my mom, she blamed herself. And how do you soothe your mom and tell your mom that it wasn't her fault that he did what he did to you? And that I still don't understand to this day why. Nor have I asked him why. But yeah, we were able to move on from that. She didn't kill him.
Yeah. So what happened with that relationship between your sisters and Dad?
So by then, my oldest sister, my niece, was already in her teens. My oldest sister's daughter. And then my other sister that's closer to me, she had my niece, who was super young at the time, like an infant. So they started questioning him being around them. And what's kind of scary about it is that it became another secret.
Yeah.
It became another secret. And I don't blame that on them at all. I take full responsibility for that. It was not something that I wanted to talk about. It wasn't something I wanted them to address with him.
Yeah.
It was my way of taking the power back and the ownership of it and letting them know, you don't need to fight this battle for me. Him and I will deal with it when we deal with it. Because I've worked through it.
Yeah.
I've dealt with it, and I've taken care of the pain the best way I know how now. Back then it was drugs, and moved on past it. But how do I say? He's still in my life.
Yeah.
He has moved away. He does not live nearby me anymore. We have a phone conversation every once in a while. I get a phone call on my birthday. I call him on his birthday. I get a Christmas card in the mail. He gets a Christmas card in the mail. I always get invited out to his house with his new wife to hang out for family functions or barbecues, but I never go. I've been. I've totally been. We attempted to work through our relationship in the past, but I was still under the influence of drugs, and it didn't really it wasn't really working through it. It was just putting a Band-Aid on it. But yeah, he's still in my life.
So you actually had that direct conversation with him about it,
Once.
Okay. And how did he receive that?
Crickets. It's quiet.
No denial, no sorry,
Nothing.
Wow.
It was like straight. It was like there was nobody on the other phone, on the other line. His wife had said something to me that I thought was inappropriate about my mother. And I called her out on it. And because I called her out on it, he was upset. So he called me and told me he was upset. And I said, well, you have a lot of nerve. Being upset with me about something she said about my mom. I was like, does she even know? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, does she even know what you did to me?
Wow.
And silence. I said, you've done a lot to me. You've hurt me in so many ways. And I can't even put it together on what I've had to do to work past all that and to be okay with it and to even talk to you on the phone. I'm like, so that's where we're at. And crickets. He's like, well, I love you. And then he hung up.
Never apologized.
Never.
Still to this day.
Still to this day.
Wow. And you have been out there to visit, and
yeah. It's been a while since I've been there. I would say it's probably been about a year since I've been over there. But he later on, when at an attempt to get clean, and while I was using, my mom had done everything she could. She was done trying to help me, and he lives in the valley, and he had found a rehab for me.
Okay.
But he was willing to pay for it. So him and my mom decided, okay, you're going to this rehab. And he put me in the rehab, which was probably about 20 minutes away from his house. And he would come pick me up on the weekends just to get me out of the rehab.
Yeah.
Take me shopping, buy me clothes, get me food.
Trying to rebuild that relationship.
Yeah. Bought me a car.
Wow.
All this. And then I was like, oh, okay.
Did you feel the love from that, or did you feel the guilt from that?
I felt guilty. I felt like it was guilt.
Okay.
Like he was attempting to make better what he knew he did wrong by saying, hey, look, I want you to get better. I want you to stop using drugs. I want you to get your life together, and I'll pay for it. And I was like, I fought it tooth and nail. I remember on the first day, or the day that they had set up for me to go. My mom's like, you're going, get your stuff in the car. I'm done with you. You can't stay here no more. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay. And I told her, I was like, okay, fine, I'll go. but on the way there, we got to stop and you got to take me to dinner. I got to eat before we go. And she's like, not a problem. So we get in the car and we're leaving. And then I just remember getting to a red light and running out of the car because I really didn't want to go. I really didn't want to go. But then getting back in the car and making it up there, and my dad pulling up the same day, that night, and introducing me to the director of the program, and them leaving me there. And, and just...
How old are you at this time?
Mid-20s, 25, 26.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I know that, drug use and drugs in general have been a big part of your story. And your recovery is also a big part of your story.
Mm-hmm.
So
Huge.
I do want to talk about how you got into the drug scene, if you want to maybe talk about that a little bit.
So 15 years old, smoking weed. That felt good. Became an everyday habit, became what we did. And back then I had friends who had cars. And it's funny because it's like in today's age, you can just walk down the street and go into a weed store and buy whatever you want.
Dispensaries everywhere.
Back then, it wasn't like that. You had to know somebody who knew somebody. Or you had to have a friend who had a car. And we would drive to Oakland on 98th. And these guys would be on the corners with their little dime sacks or 20 sacks and not knowing, and we're kids with our lunch money, driving down the street with
not
people that we don't even know.
Exactly.
And just buying weed from these guys. And we would leave during our lunch break, get in the car, drive to Oakland, buy our sack of weed, roll it up, smoke, and then be late for our next class. Yeah. And that just became a way of life. That just became what we did. And I was always high, always loaded. And my mom and dad were just like, you need to stop. I would come home reeking. Yeah. My mom would tell me, you smell like a big ass joint. And I'd be like, just loaded. And that lasted for a minute. That was like, I was good. I was like, I didn't like to drink. I didn't like the loss of the spins that you get when people get drunk. I did drink, but it wouldn't be to excess. But I can remember my junior year, the summer before my senior year, I just finished my junior year. And by then I had tried acid. I had tried cocaine. I had tried mescaline. And, acid was fun because I was going to raves, like real raves back in the day, like at hidden places. My mom would be like, I'm done. I can't keep control of you. And I just wouldn't come home. On the weekends, I'd be at a party. I'd be in the city. I'd be in Santa Rosa. Because I had friends who had cars, and we'd find these underground parties, and I would try all these club drugs, but I didn't like them. Yeah, they were okay. They were fun, but
what was your experience like on acid?
Acid is one of those drugs. Once you take it, you're on it. Yeah, you peak and then you come down. There's no I took this acid. Now I don't want to feel this anymore. This needs to stop. Yeah. You're stuck. And from one hit to 8 hits at once, it became what we did when we would go to raves and we would go to parties, and we had friends who sold it, and it was just this euphoric feel out of body experience where you just felt really tingly and smiley, and you would feel like because the music back then was so bass heavy, like party EDM, house music, so bass heavy that every time like the bass hit, you would feel it, and it would be just like, oh yeah. And I just remember going to these parties and just being like, oh man, and then we'd be like 5 hits of acid, and you're on this trip for like the next 12 hours, 13, 14 hours, and you're not coming off it until it's done with you. And it just got old. It got old. Going on field trips, school field trips, because I was still in school. Yeah. Going to Ashland, Oregon for the Shakespeare Festival with the school, with my high school. A whole bunch of us, I don't know how we found it, but we were at a park and we found a hippie with a Volkswagen bus, and he had acid for sale. Bought it from him, dropped 7 hits, went to a Shakespeare Festival, but ended up getting caught by our chaperones because we were staying in a dorm. And we were hanging out the windows and just out of our minds and getting suspended from school when we got back because they told the school. Wow. Yeah. Acid was like, woof. Like, it makes you grind your teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like, and you'd have like your jaw would hurt. So I stopped doing it. I didn't like it anymore. And
So
I
how
moved
long
on to
did you
other.
use it?
About a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
nonstop.
that has long-term effects too, right? Yeah.
It
Yeah.
and we would laugh about that.
Yeah.
We would laugh about like, oh, we're clinically insane.
Yeah. Well, they call it, right. I mean, we learn about it in law enforcement that it's like flashbacks. It can happen anytime, even 10 years later. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Not since I've been clean.
No.
No, I'm assuming I'm one of the lucky ones because I see people who are like what we would call permafried.
Yeah.
That have taken, that's all they did. I stayed away from like liquid acid because it was so intense and so strong, where I only did paper acid.
Got it. So you dissolve on your tongue.
On your tongue.
Got it. And then where did you move from the acid? And you said you've also tried mescaline and cocaine.
Didn't like it.
Either one of them? Mm-mm. No.
Yeah, mescaline was just it made you smile and it made your cheeks hurt. It was like taking shrooms. And then cocaine gave like you got an instant high for a few seconds and then it went away. And then you had this horrible nose drip that wouldn't go away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I tried all those in high school and my senior year and didn't like them. But the summer of my junior year, before I went to senior year, I was at a end of summer party with people I was in school with, and we were at a friend's house, and everybody was drinking, smoking weed, listening to music. There's probably about 50 of us. In the girl's house, it's like a movie. It's like a movie in my head. I remember it like yesterday. There's a long hallway. It's a bright light on in this back room, and everybody kept walking back toward the back room. And I'm like, what are they doing back there?
Yeah.
Walked back to the room, and it was the girl's house. It was her room. And she had a glass mirror on the desk, and it was full of white powder, or yellowish powder. And she's all, here, snort this. And I'm like, what is it?
Heroin?
She's all, no, crank.
Oh, crank.
And
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
what's that? And she's like, oh, so it's just going to make you feel really up and give you a lot of energy.
Yeah.
I'm like, she's like, you can dance all night. And I was like, oh, cool. Let me try it. So it was probably the length of a dollar bill, the size line that I did.
Yeah.
Just did it. It felt like I got socked in the face. Like it burned so bad.
Wow.
My eyes started to water. And I just sat there and I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't feel nothing. She's like, no? And I'm like, I don't feel nothing. She's like, not even awake. But then I didn't feel like a rush.
Yeah.
But I stayed up all night dancing and was just grooving. But it was like, it was all right. But then the next party, there was more. So I did it again. And it was a different type of crank. And that I felt. And I was like, wow, that was it. That opened this door. And little did I know that was going to lead me down a path it's almost going to kill me to this day.
Yeah.
Like literally, it's put me in a position today to where I've had to make some life decisions coming up real quick about my health and, what I'm going to do to make sure that I stay alive because of health issues I have now because of my drug use.
Yeah.
But yeah, I fell in love with it. It was like, whew, it opened this door, and then all my friends that were weed friends were no longer weed friends. They were all crank friends.
Yeah.
And it was just what I started
That's a
doing.
completely different scene, too.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Marijuana friends and weed friends and crank friends are different.
Yeah. And it just became what we started to do. And every day it became just like, first it was on the weekends and at parties. And then, I found that I could keep a little tutor in a little glass vial in my pocket.
Yeah.
And then while I was at school, I could go, into the bathroom and take a little, shot, go back to class. But yeah, that was all through junior year. I was just slowly but surely amping up, literally, getting more used to being high on meth or crank than anything. And then it's like pushing away from marijuana and stuff like that, and going to those type of parties.
Yeah.
Because not all the kids that I was in high school with did crank. There was a handful of us.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, that's not a very popular drug in high school. You know, weed is definitely popular, you know, and probably more even now so, just because, you know, the legality of it.
Yeah.
But crank is definitely a different crowd for sure. So when you used, were you only snorting it, or did you move to smoking and doing other things?
I started just snorting it. I would watch people smoke it and be like, I'll never do that.
Yeah.
I'd watch people smoke out of the old school, not the new light bulbs, the old school, the glass light bulbs.
Yeah.
They would take those apart and use that as a pipe. And I'd be like, what the hell are you doing? Then I seen some people smoke it on tinfoil. And I'm like, they call that chasing the dragon. I was like, what? I'm like, I watched them, like, no, it's so much easier just to snort it.
Yeah.
And then somebody taught me how to smoke it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wow, this is a whole new ball game.
Can you explain for people listening what chasing the dragon is?
So for me, chasing the dragon is you would get a piece of tinfoil, shiny side down. You'd make like a boat with a little reservoir in the center. Sprinkle your meth or your crank in the center. Straw in the mouth, holding the tinfoil in one hand, lighter underneath it. And then, give me the chills thinking about it. And melt it down, and then when it melts down, it creates the smoke, and then you suck up the smoke, and you just chase it down you're chasing that dragon, the smoke that comes off the foil. Yeah, and that became the new thing, because it was like, wow. I'm like, wow. And smoking crank was social. Mm-hmm. Where, like, you did a line, you were up, and you were like, whew, going. Where smoking, you would need to smoke a lot more to get the same rush.
Yeah,
you got.
The shelf life is a lot less, right?
Yeah.
So
it was social.
What was that immediate feeling when you did smoke it? It hits you faster, but it goes away faster also,
correct.
Right? So what was that feeling? Because I know you just said you got chills.
Yeah, just thinking about it. It's been so long. It's a body rush to where. How do I explain? What I found for myself when I would smoke crank, meth, crystal, it's an instant change in, like, I automatically changed to on the prowl. I learned that real quick. I didn't get that with snorting it. Snorting, I could dance and just hang out. But as soon as I smoked it, I was on the prowl to find a guy.
Got it.
It turned into a total sexual thing for me.
Yeah.
Porn.
You know, I've heard that a lot
all that,
from people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It turned into a total sexual thing. And I found out about myself real quick. That was like, wow, okay, smoking it awakens that part of my brain.
Yeah.
To where it's like, okay, I'm going to smoke as much dope as I can and then go find some random.
Yeah.
To make sure to have fun with. But it's a body high. It's like, and you get this, I don't know, how do I explain, like a lightheadedness almost, where you're just like, whoa. And then you get that rush to where you're like energized. Yeah. And you're like, yeah, okay. And then my thing would be sex. Like going straight to that, finding whomever, wherever, didn't matter where.
Are you worried about your safety at that time?
Safety as in
like
sexual
condoms,
safety.
Yeah.
And to this day, I've always practiced safe sex. Even then.
Good.
Yeah, and by the miracle of God, I've never had a STD. I've always get tested, but I was careful because I was so afraid of that.
Yeah.
Because I knew friends who would who had gotten HIV and died of AIDS or had STIs and stuff like that. So I was always super careful about that.
Yeah.
But it still didn't not stop me from being, oh, you're random. Come on, let's go. But you got to wear a condom. Or I'm going to wear a condom. Just, it would always be something. So, but which is weird because knowing that I was always safe made it easier for me to do more of it.
Got it.
I think if I wasn't worried about safety, I would think I would have backed off of it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But that became something that I always had to deal with while I was getting loaded.
Yeah, but I noticed that a common theme from a lot of people, I speak to a lot of people that are dealing with their, meth addiction, crank addiction, stuff like that. Their inhibitions kind of go away, right? A lot of time they'll be using, and all they're worried about is, okay, I'm gonna find some money so I can get high again, and those inhibitions go away. So it was definitely different to hear from you that was at the forefront, thinking I'm gonna still keep myself safe, because most people at that time don't care.
Yeah.
You know,
I was always worried about it.
yeah. So you said you started smoking, doing that and chasing the dragon. Did you elevate from there
I to a glass pipe.
to a glass?
So
Okay.
yeah, that was I would watch people use this paraphernalia, the glass pipe. We called the bubble, and I'd be like, how do they do that?
Yeah.
And then I was taught. But then I was bad at it in the beginning because I would burn my own drugs up or other people's drugs up, and they would like, you can't smoke with us because you don't know how to do it. And then I was taught better how to do it by people I was hanging out with, and then I was like, oh, then I found out you could walk into. There's a store in Hayward. You could just walk right in and tell them I want a 6 short, and they know exactly what you're talking about, and they sell it to you for $7. And you're out the door, and you're brand new. They call them oil burners. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm like, because I would always wonder, like, how can they sell these?
You can buy those oil burners on Amazon.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
I am so glad they didn't have Amazon back then.
Well, yeah, I learned that in my drug class. I became a drug recognition expert and learned a lot about this. That's why I talk to people about it, because it's interesting hearing your guys' side of the story. I've never dealt with the addiction part of it and using the drug. So that's why I like to get as much information as I can. But yeah, it is crazy. You can go on Amazon right now and search oil burner, and it's literally a meth pipe. Every meth pipe that I've ever found on the street from somebody, it's exact same thing.
Yeah.
So
it's funny. So we were once I learned how to do it that way, that became like my kit. I was what I call a kit on me. It would be my like an eyeglass case with the pipe inside of it with a pipe wipe in my baggie. That was my kit. I would keep that, because then I was like, I hadn't really gotten into trouble. I had never dealt with law enforcement or anything like that. And I was naive about carrying stuff around with me while I was driving in the car or had it on me. I would never hide it or anything, or it'd be in my sock.
yeah.
But then I noticed my hands would always be black with soot from the pipe.
Yeah.
And when I was using, I was very clean. That became like my tweak is what they call it. So I would always make sure that the pipe that I had was clean, because I stopped getting the pipe wipe is what we called it on my fingers, because it was so tacky. It was so bad. You just looked like a drug addict.
Yeah.
And I would try to hide it. So I would make sure I was clean, but I would always carry that kit with me and just be like, okay, this is it. Just smoking it. And it did it for me. And I was 18 at the time, and I had met a gentleman. He was 34. He just got out of prison. Mm-hmm. I met him in downtown Hayward at the porn shop in the parking lot. And it's funny because, let me rewind myself. So once I got out of high school, and I was full on using crank.
Yeah.
Using crystal.
Did you graduate?
I did. I almost didn't.
Yeah.
Because I was cutting school all the time, and then I wasn't going to school at all because I was using dope. Until I had a friend come tell me my English teacher had sent a message through her, and she found me at my mom's house. I was passed out on the couch and said that if you don't go to class, if you miss 3 more classes, you're not going to graduate. You need to go to class. You need to talk to the English teacher, blah, blah, because I had done so well that my senior year, I didn't have that many classes. I had all these extra credits, so I just needed to attend my English class and my government econ class. Those were the only classes I needed to do my senior year. So I used dope. I used meth or crank then to stay up and do extra credit to go to. I made sure I was at school. Yeah. I had a job, but I I graduated with the 3.6, and I do remember being. It's funny. You reminded me now. Being at my graduation party, that I was like, my mom was so happy. She was like, "Oh, my son graduated, blah 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 blah." But while she knew I was on something,
Yeah.
yeah, and all my family's there, and my mom is an amazing cook, and she makes the best Mexican food. She had a spread like, I don't know, like she was catering a party, and all my favorite things, and I didn't eat one thing.
Oh
I
man.
was so not hungry. I was so wired. And I just remember trying to get out of there as fast as I could. And telling her, like, and just watching people drop the cards, the graduation cards in the basket. And I'm taking those cards with me. No, you're not.
Counting
No,
that
you're
money.
not. Yeah. I got like almost, I think it was close to $3,000 for graduation. And she would divvy it out in small pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause she knew what I was going to spend it on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate. So
I'm glad I graduated. That was like, because my mom threatened me. She told me, if you don't graduate from high school, I'll kick your ass. Yeah. I'm telling you right now, you better graduate. I don't care what you do after, but you better graduate. And I made sure I did.
yeah. Well, and you said you graduated from Arroyo.
Mm-hmm.
What year was that?
96.
Oh, okay. You graduated same year as me.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. So you were my rival because I was in San Lorenzo.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's crazy. Small world.
Yeah,
So
right?
yeah. Well, I mean, so I'm assuming this addiction just, I mean, as does with most meth users, it just kind of snowballs. Right?
Skyrocketed.
Yeah.
It went from weekend warrior, then through the end of senior year to graduate to every day.
Yeah.
And then once I had no responsibility, I had a job. I worked at Safeway in Oakland. I was a bagger, then I worked in the deli. And that was everyday use. Everyday use. Before work, during work, at work, after work, staying up for, I think the longest I've ever stayed up at that point was like 6 or 7 days.
Yeah.
And just full on just monster. Just
yeah.
shadows moving, thinking trees are people.
Yeah, it's meth-induced psychosis, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's bad.
Just loss of total control. Well, I still felt like I was in control, and you couldn't tell me to stop if my life depended on it.
Wow. Yeah. And this is just a crank addiction. You're not using anything else at this point. You're not even smoking weed anymore. You're not doing anything.
No.
Okay.
Weed became the enemy, which is funny. Weed became the enemy.
Yeah, because it does the opposite, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would be up for so many days at one time that one drag of weed, I'd pass out.
You'd hibernate.
Yeah, and I'd go, exactly.
Yeah.
I'd sleep for days, and I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I felt like I missed something. Yeah, so weed became like my kryptonite.
Yeah.
So I would stay away from it. Again, now all my friends are straight tweakers. I became a straight tweaker.
I mean, the human body and the human mind is not equipped to stay awake for days on end, right? I mean, we need our sleep. So at what point, I don't know if you remember this exactly, but at what point, day 1, day 2, day 3, what was it that you started noticing, okay, I'm tripping out now. Like I noticed things are different. How long would it take for you to feel that?
And it's not funny, but it's I would used to say it all the time to my friend or to the people I was getting loaded with, that it doesn't start getting fun until day 3.
Wow. So it's fun to you.
Yeah.
I mean, was it literally fun to you, or was that just
in the beginning? And somebody might not agree with me that and I think everybody's story is different that's gone through an drug addiction. I would be lying to you if I tell you I didn't have fun.
Yeah,
I had fun. There's a lot of times where I was loaded, but I still maintained a job. Mm-hmm. I had a car, I had a cell phone, paid my bills, may not have had anywhere to stay and was couch surfing or staying in the car or sleeping on in my old room, or if my mom let me stay there,
Yeah.
But I always had my own money. I always, and I had some good jobs in the past. I just couldn't keep them because I was loaded all the time.
Of course.
But I had fun. But then at one point, the fun, the party aspect, the social aspect of it went away, and it turned into a dependence. Like I needed it, and if I didn't have it, then other things would happen to make sure that I got it, and that's where it was no longer fun.
Yeah. So what lengths did you end up going through or going to get the drugs you needed?
So like I had mentioned, I had a job in high school. It was Safeway. I worked at an Oakland store. I started as a bagger. And it was a smaller Safeway. And I became the lead bagger. Like I had the best shifts, because I'd been there for a minute. And back then the cigarettes were up front in this case that had keys, and it had like plastic doors, but they were locked.
Okay.
And I would be cleaning up in the morning, or if I worked a night shift, I would go into that case and just toss
Wow. Yeah.
cartons of cigarettes into the trash. And then I would go, and it was a split level, like there was a bottom parking lot and then there was a parking lot on the roof. And I would always park on the roof by the garbage can. And I would go and get the bag of garbage and put it in my trunk. And I would have cartons and cartons and cartons of cigarettes. Yeah. And then that turned into alcohol.
And smoking meth and smoking cigarettes kind of go hand in hand, right?
I was a cool smoker.
Yeah.
I smoked Cools, the green pack. But I would sell the cigarettes and get money from that. And then it became alcohol. Because we had a locked up liquor case that had like Cristal. It had all that expensive champagne and expensive liquor in it. I wouldn't drink it, but I'd take the bottles.
Yeah.
And put them in the trash.
Easy money for you.
Yeah, easy money. But then that wasn't giving me enough. And they had put me in the deli. And where that store was located, the lunch rush there was huge because there was a lot of construction workers. And they'd come in for sandwiches and stuff like that, and we'd be nonstop busy. So you'd have like 2 clerks working the deli counter, making the sandwiches, getting the hot food, doing all that, helping the customers, and then 1 clerk at the register doing the sales, cashing them out.
And you're able to do all of this while you're high.
Loaded.
Wow.
Spun.
And nobody's saying anything.
Nobody's saying nothing to me.
Wow.
Well, some of the checkers would be like, because if I was pushing carts and it was freezing cold outside, I'd come in sweating, dripping, and they'd be like, "You're sure sweating a lot. Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm good. Yeah, I'm good." But when they put me in the deli, and then I got behind that cash register, that was it. I was easy. I was easy money. I was like, boom, 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 boom. Oh, you're paying with the 20? Boom, 20, give them the change. Boom, boom. Not even caring. Cameras, just like, I'm going to get away with this. And it lasted for like a good 6 months.
Wow.
Thousands and thousands of, like, probably close to $8,000-$9,000.
Jesus.
Off lunch rushes. And then I remember getting called into the office. And the assistant store manager was like, there's a problem in the deli. And I'm like, "Oh, really? What's the problem?" "Their books are off." I'm like, "Oh, really?" And I had just came back from vacation.
Yeah.
So the week I was on vacation, they had no problems. And then I come back and they're like, "Okay, now there's a problem."
Again. Wow.
So they pinpointed it to me. They didn't have really, let's say, proof of it, like video proof, but just put it out there. And I would just remember being so high, and I was like, "Yeah, I did it." And they're like, "Okay, well, we need you to sign this, that all the PT and all the vacation that you've accrued, and because I had been there for a minute, it's gonna pay back what you owe." And
so they didn't terminate you?
You're going to owe me. Yeah, I
did.
walked that day. You're going to owe us this much money, and you need to pay that back, and we won't prosecute you. And I'm really like, okay. And I signed the paper. Ended up having to pay them back.
Actually, a pretty good deal.
And walked out, but I could never work for Safeway again.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was like, the drug took me to that level to where it's like I thought I was like invincible, and I was like, "Oh, wait, you're getting away with this."
And you just moved to something else.
Yeah, well, from then on, it's funny because that was in Oakland, so that brought me back toward like the Hayward area. And and I got a job at a sandwich shop, Togo's.
Okay.
And there was a pizza place on Hesperian. It's not there anymore. It was called the Pizza Joint.
Yeah.
I had a pipe organ.
Yeah.
I worked there. So I had these 2 jobs, working them simultaneously.
Right across from Kennedy Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Started as a pizza maker, ended up being a manager. Started as a sandwich maker at Togo's, ended up being a manager at both places. Didn't steal from them. They just supplied my habit.
Yeah.
They just gave me my paychecks, literally went to paying off my cell phone bill, my car insurance. My car was paid off, and supplying my habit. Yeah, so I was working 2 jobs to get loaded. But then I found the downtown Hayward area. I didn't know about it until I was like 19. But I don't know. I can't even remember how, but I stumbled upon downtown Hayward, and there's a porn shop there.
Yeah.
On Main Street. I remember parking in the back parking lot and just like, what are all these people doing here? And I was waiting for somebody, and they were like, yeah, just park behind the porn shop. And when they got there, I'm like, what are all these people doing here? And they were like, he's like, oh, there's a porn shop right there. And then you got back then, the Turf Club that's right there by the porn shop used to be where Starbucks is. Right there before that whole shopping center was built. The bar was there. It was a baby store and something else. They're like, the gay bar's right there. There's that bar, and that bar. And I was like, oh, my porn shop. And like, you've never been in the porn shop? And I said, I've never been in there. And I remember walking in there the first time, and I was just like, whoa. Like sex toys, DVDs, lingerie, and all this. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, this is kind of creepy. I'm like, this is strange. And there's all these seedy looking dudes in there, just like eyeballing you when you walk in. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
And they're like, come on. He's like, come on, let's go to the back. And I'm like, the back? So we walk in the back, and there's this arcade. And there's a double hallway full of rooms with doors that you go into, and you put money in the machine, and you can watch porn. And there's a chair.
Wow.
And you can use your imagination. So these rooms are full of guys doing things. And I was like, what the fuck? But what I found was like, oh, this is the perfect place to come smoke dope. So I would go in there with my pipe, with my kit, and my baggie, go in there, light up, and put like $20, $30 in the machine, turn the volume all the way up.
Because again, but like you mentioned before, that when you do that, it gets you.
It gets sexual real quick. And just sit there for hours, just feeding that machine money, smoking dope.
Wow.
And then what I found was that if you stay in there long enough, people would knock on your door. And they'd want to come in.
Mm-hmm.
And the shop didn't care because there was cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how many guys I met and did things with.
Wow.
In that back room, those back rooms.
It's just a daily thing that you were doing?
It's still there to this day. Because like I go to downtown Hayward now. I will never go to downtown Hayward by myself.
Yeah.
Because why? Why tempt the beast? And there's a bakery there that I like. There's a nail shop there that I go to. The movie theater's there, but I always have somebody with me. But like it's funny when I drive by it that it's like it's still there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I bet the same things are still going on there.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, but I would find myself in there meeting men, having sex, and then leaving, and then coming back and doing it again, or just spending the afternoon there, spending hundreds of dollars there, just feeding that machine, or just getting loaded in there. Like it was a safe place to go. Like so, I didn't want to get loaded in the car.
Yeah.
You can't get loaded on the street. So I would just like, boom. If I didn't have somewhere to go get loaded at, I'd just go pop a 20 in, get loaded, and then come out and walk around.
Yeah.
And then what I found out was like that people were having sex inside these rooms, but also in the parking lot.
Jeez.
That you could just park your car there and hop in a car. I was like, oh, this is even better.
Yeah.
So I found myself doing that. But then I found myself getting, pulled up by the Hayward PD. And at that time, you're on one. It's like 3:00 in the morning. What are you doing in that parking lot? And same cops would roll through.
Uh-huh.
And I just remember they would pull us up and ask us, hey, stop. And they'd pull these index cards out of their front pocket. And they're like, what's your name?
Mm-hmm.
Check your ID. Check to see if you have any warrants.
Yeah.
You were clear. They'd write your name. Why are you down here? How often do you come down here? Just writing all this stuff. And we're like, why are you writing it down? Oh, well, we need to keep a log of who's down here. You know, you can't be down here.
Yeah.
And I would be like, well, why? Why not? And I made friends in this parking lot, and they had been going to this parking lot for years doing this stuff. And I'd be like, what the? I met so many different people. And it was everybody there was loaded. Everybody there was smoking. Now it went from crank to meth. Mm-hmm. Everybody smoking meth in the cars and doing things in the cars. And I was just like, okay, this is like my Disneyland.
Yeah.
And it just became where I always was. And there was this, it's not called this anymore, but it's still there. It used to be called the Green Shutter. Mm-hmm. It's now somebody bought it and remodeled it. Now,
right?
Now it's these nice luxury like apartments or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But before it was a place where parolees would get paroled and people would pay the rent weekly.
Yeah.
I found that place and I was like, oh, nothing but tweakers in here.
Yeah.
So now I got a new place across the street from the porn shop that I can hang out because I made friends. So my world became downtown Hayward, and that was like my stomping grounds.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember meeting at 18, I met a 32-year-old dude. He just got out of prison.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, can you just explain for people listening the difference between crank and meth? I know you said
So for me, if I were to explain the difference, crank was more like, how do I say, like hillbilly, like homemade. Like, how do I explain where meth was, like his meth, like to me, meth and crystal are the same.
Uh-huh.
Like, and it was stronger.
Got it.
It had less.
It wasn't stepped on as much.
Yeah, it had
right?
less stuff in it.
Yeah.
Less cut in it. Because then people were putting everything in crank. You know, because when you would burn it off, you would see what was left, and you'd be like, okay, that's the good stuff. That's the stuff that's really going to get you loaded.
Yeah.
All the cut has burned off.
Got it.
And meth and crystal were look like crystal, like a crystal color.
Clear.
Where in meth or crank was like yellow, or they even called it peanut butter because it was brown.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the effects were different. Like to me, when crystal came out, it was strong. Like I could toot a little bit like this, and
yeah,
I'm running for hours, or smoke even a little bit of it, and you're up for hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, but whereas in crank, you would need to use a little bit more.
Got it. Okay. So now you're around 18, you said?
18, 19.
18, and you meet this
32-year-old dude right out of prison.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny because the friends that I had made at the parking lot, had told me, oh, this guy's getting out. Dad, I'm like, who's this guy? And they're like, oh, stay away from him. If you see him, stay away from him. He's bad news. I'd be like, who is this guy? And they would always talk about how they used to get loaded with him. He's been in jail, blah, 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 blah. And I just remember being in the parking lot, parked and toward the back, and I just see this guy walking. He's covered in tattoos. He's built, just like he just got out of prison. And I was like, damn. And he walked right up to me. And he introduced himself and told me what he was looking for. He wanted to get loaded. Could I get any dope? And I'm like, well, what kind of dope are you looking for? He's like, he said crank, or he's all meth, crank. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I got some. And we ended up getting a hotel room, getting loaded, and having sex. And then he became my boyfriend.
Wow.
We never left each other's side for the next, I don't even know how long.
The guy everybody told you to stay away from.
Stay away from him. Yeah, and when my friends seen me with him, like the next day, they're like, we told you to stay away from him. He's bad news. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, he's not. He's good. We get along perfectly. But he started shooting dope. Mm. That's how he liked to do it.
Okay.
And I watched him. I remember sitting there in a hotel room, like the fourth night we were hanging out, and him injecting himself with meth, and I was just like, damn. I'm like, does that feel good? And he's like, it's totally different.
Yeah.
Totally different. And I'd be like, I don't like needles. I hate needles. He got to the point where that's the only way he was getting loaded. I was still smoking.
Yeah.
And he would shoot himself up. But he would be up for so long that he would shake. He would literally be like, and he couldn't get the needle in.
Yeah.
Because he was shaking so bad and he really wanted to get loaded. So he taught me how to do it. So he taught me on him. This is how you do it. This is how you find the vein. This is where you inject the needle, how far you go in. And I'd be like, okay. So I started shooting him up when he couldn't do it. And I remember the first time I did it for him, he like literally grabbed me by my throat and said, if I ever find out that you're shooting dope, I'll fucking kill you. And I looked at him, I'm like, oh. I'm like, okay. I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah. So he wasn't trying to entice you into it.
He just wanted to make sure that he could get loaded.
Yeah.
If he couldn't do it himself. And I was like, oh, he really cares. Yeah. But looking back on it now, I'm like, he just knew if I did it that way, it'd be less dope for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to say all that to say this is that I've never stuck a needle in my arm.
No.
Never. Yeah. I was a smoker, snorter my whole career in use. I never graduated to the needle. I've had many people try to talk me into it and have done it in front of me so many times. I could shoot them better than they could shoot themselves.
Yeah, you're damn near a phlebotomist at that point, right?
It never piqued my interest because I'd watched them come down.
Yeah.
And then I'd watch them change from who they were to this.
How did that high change? What was the difference between the two?
His eyes turned from brown to black.
Wow.
He turned into a monster. And I thought my sex addiction was crazy. He showed me a whole nother level when it came to sex addiction and drugs and meth. He would take me to places. He took me to Aquatic Park in Berkeley. And I'm like, what are we doing here? He's like, we had an 8-ball dope. I gave him half. I sat there in the car smoking, and I'll be back. And he just left me there.
Yeah.
I'm like 20 years old. And because we were together for a minute. And he took off, and then he came back like 4 hours later. I'm still in the car tweaking. And he's buttoning his pants and zipping his zipper. All I can see is his skin. And I'm like, where the hell's your boxers at? Yeah. He's like, oh, I left him in the bush. I'm like, you left him in the bush? He's like, yeah. I'm like, is that why we came out here? He's like, that's what we do out here. He's like, people go in the bush. There's like this park off the freeway, and you just get out and walk around. And there's these big, huge bushes, and nobody sees you, and they're just having sex. And I was like, what the hell? I'm like, in the bush? Wow. I'm like, naked in the bush? And he's like, yeah. He's like, do you want to go walk around? I'm like, I'm good. Yeah. It always made me nervous because I'm like, oh no, something could happen to me. I'm like, somebody could rape me. Somebody could take advantage. And he's like, isn't that what you want? And I'm like, no, it's not what I want. But that's what we did. I would take him.
But that's the difference between his sex addiction and yours, right? That's what you're talking about.
Mine, and that was because this is like I already started using. I'm using every day, but I'm still in the beginning of it all. Mm-hmm. And toward the end of my addiction, I wasn't in bushes doing things like that, but I became that monster that he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I became ruthless. I tied my sex addiction into my money making. Mm-hmm. And a lot of gentlemen or a lot of guys that were buying drugs from me at the end were like, I don't know what's the word, blackmailed. I guess you would call it blackmail. I would blackmail them.
Yeah. Yeah,
into making sure they always purchased their drugs from me. I was a monster. I was a straight monster. I learned that from him. Like, these guys were straight, but they'd get loaded and they'd be willing to do whatever, or they'd be willing to do whatever for some drugs. And they had girlfriends or they were married, but they would like to get loaded. So my thing was like, okay, I'll get you high or I'll give you this bag. And and then we'd go into whatever sex act we were going to do, and then the camera would come out.
Yeah.
And I would take the pictures of that guy in a compromising position, and he wouldn't want that picture to get out
Yeah.
to his wife, his kids.
Did you ever feel worried that somebody would try to hurt you or kill you by taking these photos?
Yeah. I got threatened a few times, but yeah, I was so out of it at the end that I was just worried about making money and getting loaded that I would tell him, if you don't buy your drugs from me, I'm going to show these pictures.
Yeah.
So, hey, we just got loaded. You got to see what kind of crystal I have. You like it. Obviously, you like doing this. I have it on film.
Mm-hmm.
You better come back to me and buy your dope. If you don't, I'm going to show everybody these pictures.
Wow.
And that kept my pockets full at the end. But like I said, I was a monster. I was like, I didn't care about who it was, if they were willing to go there, and I could get it on film.
How many straight men would you say you've had sexual experiences with because of these drugs?
Hundreds.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny what straight men will do for when they're unloaded. I've had men tell me, "Oh, I'm not going to smoke on the same pipe as you because you have sex with men."
Yeah.
Because I don't know where your mouth has been. But then they get loaded enough, they're smoking off the pipe, and then same pipe, and then they want to do more things than just smoke off the pipe. And then I'd be like, "Oh, okay, your tune's changed," and then I would make sure that I would have pictures on my phone about it. And then I'll be like, just keep coming back to me, buying your dope, and we're good.
Yeah.
We can even mess around if you want, because that's what you like to get into when you get loaded. But I've had wives come at me.
Yeah.
Yeah, one guy I was messing around with. He had a wife and 2 kids.
Yeah.
And I was working at the sandwich shop, and I was in the middle of a lunch rush, and I don't know how she found out. I didn't say anything. So somebody told her, but she came in to my job and was like, "Are you Daniel?" I said, "I am." And my boss is there helping with this lunch rush.
Yeah.
And I was standing by the to-go counter, and there was a big order, and they had sodas, and they were in the to-go tray. And she just grabbed the soda tray and threw it at me and screamed at me and said, "You better stay away from my husband. He has kids."
Oh, wow.
And I looked at her. I was like, "Your fault." I'm like, "You treat him better." I'm like, "Obviously, he likes me more than you." And she walked out. Yeah. So that risk that was there of getting caught or getting hurt or possibly getting murdered or whatever was like almost like a bigger thrill. Like, we'll see how far we can push this.
Man.
Yeah.
So during these interactions with these straight men, are they performing sex acts with you, or are you performing sex acts with
Both.
them? Or wow, so they're actually engaging and doing this as
Those pictures,
straight men.
if they had something in their mouth, those pictures were the best, because those pictures were the ones they really. It's funny with looking back on it now with some of those straight men. They weren't really straight, but they like, if they were caught in the compromising position with something in their mouth, they were super worried about that. But if any other pictures, they didn't care about. It was like not a big deal. But yeah, I would always go for that picture.
Yeah.
To get them on their knees, because that picture to them emasculated them.
Yeah.
It took their manhood right away from them. And I had 2 phones. I had my phone and I had the picture phone.
Yeah.
So just in case I were to get hemmed up or they would try to run after me, or like later on down the road, I would be like, okay, well, if they try to attack me, I'm like, I have 2 phones. They're going to take the wrong phone. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would keep that other phone hidden. I had hiding places in whatever car I was in. Yeah, but I was a monster. I was... I look back on it now, it's scary.
Do you feel like these guys were really heterosexual men? Or do you feel like, because what I guess my question is was it the drugs that turned them into doing this? Or do you feel like it was there all along? And then,
Well, I
you
think
know what I mean?
looking back on it now, because it's funny, because we're at my current job, it's when I started my current job, it's in the same area I got loaded in.
Yeah.
So I have periodically ran into these people
Jeez.
that I used to, use with, and some of them now are out and proud. I'm like, oh, right on, you're out and proud.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Some of it was
they
there.
were probably gay, but I would say a handful of them were just because they were loaded.
Wow. That's
Just because they were
crazy.
so horny, so looking for something to feel good and just revved up that it, like, what was the joke? Any hole will do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that just kind of goes to show. I mean, people know that addiction is strong, but that right there, it shows you like how strong addiction really is, right?
Yeah, we called it queer juice.
Wow.
Like us queer people called it queer juice because it would turn a straight man gay for however long.
Wow,
call it queer juice.
that's insane. So, how long did this run go on? I mean, were you? I know you were selling the drugs and everything. Did it ever turn into like manufacturing it, or were you just buying it from somebody in bulk and kind of going there?
So, I had a friend in San Francisco that was manufacturing stuff, but then he blew up his apartment.
Oh, yeah.
And died.
Wow.
So that scared the shit out of me because I was in that apartment many times while he was making it.
Yeah.
And I've watched people make it, but as soon as my friend blew up his apartment, that was it. I was like, that scared me.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I can't be around. And then all the work that it took to make it, like what you needed to do, what you needed to have. These tweakers that thought they were chemists and didn't know what they were doing could kill somebody. So I just thought it would be easier just to travel. So I'd go to Modesto. I'd go to San Francisco. I'd go to as far out as like Oakley. And I'd always have people in different places. And I'd just purchase and then bring back. In my head, I was this mini Scarface running around downtown Hayward. And I had all the bartenders in my pocket.
Yeah.
At the gay bars, at the other bars, they all bought dope off me. Everybody, it was like they were all in my pocket. But the scary thing was that I had a friend that was out there. She was a prostitute. She lived in the Green Shutter. She would always buy it from me, but she always knew where I was at. And for me, I didn't realize that until I got clean. That I thought it was like, oh, I have all this power, all this money. But in essence, now looking back, I was like, anytime anybody called me, I'd run to them. So it was like they were in charge of me because I had the stuff that they wanted and I would get high off the money that they were giving me. But I was basically punching that clock for years, just running back. There was periods where I would get clean. I'd like wake up for a minute, get caught up, go to jail, and then be like, oh, I'm going to stay clean. And then last for maybe 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. I even got a year at one point.
Wow.
And went right back out. Yeah. The longest I got was 3 years. I had stayed clean for 3 years and then went back out. And yeah, it's like off and on for so many years. But like the selling aspect of it is where it started to speed up. It started to speed up.
How much were you buying at a time?
So for me to go to Modesto, I would need, just depended, a quarter pound. If they had a pound, I would try to get up all the money to buy that or get it fronted.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say like maybe 3 or 4 ounces at a time at the most. Because as I got deeper into it, I started getting more attraction by law enforcement.
Yeah.
I started getting a record and getting in trouble for being under the influence, for paraphernalia. So I became like, the bigger amount I got, I would buy it, leave it there, and bring it back in ounces. But I knew I had it out there.
Yeah.
So I would just go pick it up when I needed it, and I would make that trip. And people would always see me and like, hey, you got anything? Like out in the open.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
My friend that lived in the Shutter, she lived above the bistro, that bar on the corner of B Street. And I remember walking down right past her window, and she opened her window and was like, Dan, I need a 20-second dope. And I was like, Just kept walking.
Yeah.
She'd find me in the porn shop. She'd come in the arcade in the back, and I'd be in there weighing stuff out, smoking, doing whatever. Dan, I know you're in here. I need some dope. Come out now. And I just sit there quiet. I started parking my car in other places because people started knowing what car I was. And I had 2 cars.
Yeah.
I was either driving a Camry, my mom's Camry, or my grandpa gave me this white truck, old school white truck.
Yeah.
Or I'd be driving that back and forth. Or I had my car. And just so people wouldn't know what car I was in so they couldn't find me.
So on a good month for you, what kind of money were you making?
It supplied hotel rooms. It supplied my own habit, gas, because I would have jobs,
Yeah.
but then I would lose them. Like I worked at Champs. I was a store manager, assistant store manager at Champs in Stone Ridge. I went through their management program, lost that job because I was loaded. I worked for Alameda County and in the warehouse, lost that job because I was loaded. But so that had to supplement my income because I didn't have a job. So on a good day, because for me, I didn't like selling, like if somebody wanted a big quantity, I'd send them somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'd make more money if I broke it down into smaller pieces and sold it that way.
Yeah.
So on a good day, anywhere from, $800 to $2,000 a day.
Wow.
Yeah. But then also too, on the flip side of that was smoking about that much.
Yeah. You're
For
getting
myself.
an unlimited amount for yourself
so it was
too,
really
right?
like how I painted the picture in my head was like, oh, you're smoking for free. You're not
Yeah.
paying for your drugs.
Yeah.
But I was working for it because I would have to spend all that time answering phone calls. And then I would meet people at Safeway on Foothill. I tell them, meet me there at 6. Meet me there at 6. Line them up.
Yeah.
And then I'd car hop. Boom, 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 boom. Drop everything off. And then go. And boom. And I would try not to retire back to the hotel room until I made my money because I had to pay for the hotel room for the week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were getting a lot of attention from law enforcement at that time.
Yeah. I will go to the end of it. Like my last run, let's see. I was clean for 3 years. I graduated a program. I was working at the county,
Yeah.
making good money. I was working so much that I forgot about my recovery because the seed had been planted. Recovery had been planted in my head. I'd been going to meetings, graduated from Second Chance. I was doing really well. And I stopped going to meetings. I stopped taking care of myself. I went to February 27th, 2011. I went to a birthday party for a friend that had reached out on Facebook at Charades Bar on Mission.
Yeah.
So I went there. There was a DJ. And again, I don't like to drink, but we were buying shots. I was taking double shots of Patron, and I got wasted. And I don't like when you close your eyes and you start to spin. So the easiest way to get rid of that was to do some cocaine. And I don't like cocaine. So I just teasing myself, thinking I'm like, oh yeah, you'll be fine. You can drink more. You can do some cocaine. So somebody there had cocaine. So we went and we did some cocaine, and then I sobered up.
Yeah.
Ended up drinking some more, doing some more cocaine. And then like by midnight, I was like, screw this. Because with cocaine, you go up, down, up, down, up, down. You got to keep doing more and more and more to keep getting that rush.
Yeah.
So I left and I went straight to downtown Hayward, found somebody in the parking lot that had dope, and got loaded.
After 3 years.
Yeah. And that run lasted from February 27th till December 16th, 2011. So from February to December of 2011, I lost my job at the county.
Wow. How fast that goes.
Yeah,
Right?
everything. Still had my car. Was still back and forth between mom's house, but not really staying there. She had like kind of put a boundary up with me saying you're not allowed
Yeah.
because you're using. moved into a house around the corner from my mom's house with this couple, with this lesbian couple that was there, and they were all loaded on dope, but was selling dope. Still working in the beginning, but then lost the job. So once I lost the job, the sales of drugs increased, but I got stopped by deputy sheriff.
Let me stop you real quick. I do want to ask a question because I've been wanting to ask this question from prior interviews. When you stopped for that 3 years and then you used again after the 3 years, did it feel like the first time you used, or was
Yes.
It did.
I literally.
So it started over.
The first time, well, because I had already used cocaine and alcohol that night and was coming down off the cocaine, that first snort of crystal, 3 years later, I threw up.
Wow.
It was like literally like my body was rejecting it, like saying, no, don't do this, because it had been so long. But I was high.
Yeah.
And that's all it took. Once I opened the door,
that was it.
That was it. I ran. I ran right through it.
Okay.
And didn't stop. It was like literally right. It's like they say when you relapse, you pick up right where you left off, and then it accelerates 10 times faster. It did.
Wow.
Completely 10 times faster. I was right back in it. It didn't take long for the selling aspect to come back. It didn't take long for the
that's what you knew.
Yeah,
right?
The parking lot aspect, the porn shop aspect, and staying up for days, and then trying to maintain that job in the beginning. Didn't work out, lost the job, and then just started full on back in the selling aspect of it. But during that time, when I was staying in that house with that couple, I would leave that house, and there's a Wendy's parking lot right in front of that house. And the sheriff's department would always park there. And there was this one sheriff, and I had a white GMC truck at the time, GMC Jimmy, and he pulled me over, and I was loaded. I was so high. I was like, my eyeballs was sweating.
Yeah.
And he's just looking at me. He's like, you're under the influence. I'm like, no, I'm not. He's all, yeah, you are. He's all, it's 3 a.m. What are you doing? And he just pulled me out of the car. I didn't have any warrants. But he still took me to the sheriff's station in San Leandro and told me, this is where this relationship started with this gentleman. Like, I'm not gonna let up on you. I know you got something. I'll catch you with something.
Yeah.
You're not. That's what happens with people like you. And I'd be like, you don't know me.
Yeah.
What do you mean people like me? And that's where the offer came. You help me, and I'll help you. I won't arrest you if you help me. I'm like, well, what do you mean by help? And it's that famous, you give me 3 and I'll let you free. And I'll be like, 3? I'm like, no, I'm not in for that. No, just then arrest me. He let me go. So I left.
Yeah.
But then this has started this relationship with this sheriff that anytime he's seen me, and he patrolled that area all the time, he'd stop me and he'd toss my car and anybody in the car with me. So, and we became on a first last name basis. Like we called each other by our last names.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this fool, he's not going to let up. He's just, and now I had to start giving people a disclaimer. If you get in the car with me, be prepared. Don't have anything on you. Please don't have nothing in your personal pocket. You don't have nothing hiding anywhere.
We used to call that the felony pocket, the coin pocket.
Don't hide nothing nowhere, because he don't care. He'll get somebody out here to search you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, or don't get in the car with me. Because it never failed. I 15 to 20 times within a few weeks, I was getting stopped, tossed. The funny thing is, like, I came out of a seedy-ass hotel and got stopped. And I had these guys with me and got taken to Santa Rita for being under the influence.
Yeah.
And he came and got me and pulled me out of jail and said, what are you doing?
Wow.
What are you doing out here? And I'm like, leave me in here. He's like, why? I was like, because if you take me out of here, they know I went to jail.
Yeah.
If you take me out of here and I'm out back on the street today that quick, like I didn't even go to court. I'm like, they're going to think I'm helping you. I'm like, and there's a target on my back.
Yeah.
I'm like, they'll try to fucking kill me. And he's like, no, You'll be fine. Pulled me out. Put me back out on the street. He's like, you're more good to me on the street than you are locked up. He's like, because I'm going to get somebody with you. Mm-hmm. And I was like, fuck. He just didn't let up on me. Yeah. And it just went back and forth like that the whole time I was getting loaded. And it was like catch me if you can kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I would say, I want to say the good. Yeah, I'm not even afraid to say it. The good thing about that relationship was because I was selling drugs, and mind you, downtown Hayward had they had created this thing called the Loop, to where there's a lot of one ways now. Instead of it didn't used to be like that. You could go both ways on some of these streets. Now it's just a lot of one ways. You got to go in this loop. So this guy seen me on B Street going down B Street and was screaming at me like, hey, I know you got dope. I know you got dope. And I'm just like, oh, fuck. Yeah. How embarrassing. I'm just like trying to get down B Street and I get stuck in traffic at the light. And I'm like, fuck. So I'm going and this fool, this big Tongan dude, starts running down B Street and I get caught at the light and he hopped in my fucking car because I didn't have the door locked. He fucking put a screwdriver to my neck. Wow. And he's telling me, I know you have dope on you. Don't ignore me. Keep driving. So we end up driving to a parking lot down the street. I had a laptop on me. I had probably like a quarter ounce of dope on me. Probably like $400 in cash. And he robbed me with the fucking flathead screwdriver. Like broke my neck. He broke the skin on my neck. I was bleeding, like ready to shove it in there if I didn't give him what he asked, because he was nuts. Everybody knew he was nuts. The traffic light wasn't in my favor that day. But I was able to, I called him and I said, hey, this is what happened to me. And I don't know what he did, but he did something because that guy got arrested. Yeah. And I don't think it was for that. Yeah. It wasn't for that, but it was for something else. Mm-hmm. And that guy got taken off the street. So
you felt like you could use that.
Yeah. It was like a chip in my pocket. Uh-huh. Like I could call him if I needed something. But still was worried about getting looked at by the people I was hanging around with like a snitch. Mm-hmm. Because I seen what they did to snitches. And I didn't want that to happen to me. Yeah. So I just started to distance myself from hanging out with people. Moved out of that tweaker house and just started staying in hotels. Mm-hmm. And all I was focused on was selling my drugs and getting loaded. Selling my drugs and getting loaded. Hanging out, getting laid, doing this, doing that, and just frequenting certain hotels in Hayward, Casablanca. Mm-hmm. The other one that's by Taco Bell and Foothill. Just these different hotels, moving around. And I'd always carry like 2 luggages in the back of the car, in the back of the truck. Yeah. That had clothes, hygiene, stuff like that. Because I was one of those that always was in the mirror, always taking showers. But I was tired. I was super tired. And this is like the beginning of November 2011. I was starting to get really, really tired. It was getting close. Thanksgiving was coming around. My mom calls, are you coming for Thanksgiving? And I said, sure. Why not? Mm-hmm. And she's like, okay, well, you need to be here by this time. I'm like, what do you need me to bring? So I need you to bring pies. And I said, okay, I'll stop and get pies. I hadn't seen my sisters or any of my family in a while. Yeah. They had stopped caring.
So that relationship was fractured.
Yeah. It was like, they were like, you're going to do what you're going to do. We're not going to chase you anymore. Yeah. We're not going to worry about you. You've done what you keep doing what you're doing. You keep going in and out of jail. You keep going back to the same areas, doing the same things, do what you do. Yeah. We're here when you decide to make a change. But I wasn't ready. I just remember that day, that Thanksgiving, walking into Lucky by my mom's house, and I was coming out of the grocery store with the pies in my hand, and bam, I hit my sister, like, boom, head on, like literally. I hadn't seen her in so long. Yeah. And she's just like, oh my God, look at you. And I was like, what do you mean, look at me? Look how bad you look. You look awful. Oh my God, you're not going to mom's like that. I said, oh, she invited me. Pies. And she's like, oh, you better not. Oh my God, she's going to cry. And I was, I'm a big guy now. Then I was probably like 100 and, for me, which is small, 180 pounds, 190, 185. Wow. I sent you that picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's where I'm just like, I look like a hot dog.
Yeah.
Fucking sucked up. And I just remember being there Thanksgiving, not really even eating, just waiting to leave.
Yeah.
Made my appearance. Didn't want to, was basically forced to take pictures. And I'm like, and I'm glad I did, because that's the picture that I have documented for myself of what I look like on a full on run.
Yeah.
Tweaking, out of my mind, but almost literally almost at the end though. I was a few weeks away from getting clean. Didn't know it then.
Wow.
Yeah, it's weird to look back at it. I was looking back at those pictures and I'm like, wow, I didn't know I was going to be clean in a couple of weeks. Yeah, so the last couple of weeks, I show up at mom's house. My mom wasn't working at that time. She was babysitting my niece. My niece was 3 years old. And I came home. And she would let me periodically come home. She'd wash my clothes.
Yeah.
She'd feed me.
Yeah.
Let me sleep in my old room.
Doing mom things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I passed out, slept for like a day and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up and my phone was dead. And I was like, oh, that's all the money I just lost. That many people called me that they killed my phone. I'm like, I got to go.
Yeah.
So I remember coming up the stairs. It's like, I got to go. No, you need to eat. I'm like, okay, fix me something. I'll eat. And I remember eating and then giving her like some cash and telling her thank you. And then walking out the door. She's like, you don't have to go.
Yeah.
We'll get you help.
Yeah.
I said, no, I gotta go. And then my little 3-year-old niece, like running after me, telling me, Uncle, don't go, Uncle. But I left anyways.
Yeah.
And I remember parking around the corner in my car, in tears, crying. Like, how did I get here again?
Yeah.
Because I was tired. I was tired. I was tired of the lifestyle. I was tired of getting loaded and doing all that, just like having to keep up with it. Because by then, it wasn't fun anymore. It was a dependence. Like, if I didn't have it, I would be like, almost like I couldn't breathe. Like, but I would always I made sure I always had it. But like, sleep to me was only necessary if my body said you had to go to sleep. Like when I got to my mom's a couple days before that, day and a half before that, my body was like, sleep. You gotta sleep. You have to. I would have died because my body was so out of it. I was so out of whack. And I just remember sitting there crying and just like, how did I get here? Because I had clean time before. Mm-hmm. And I left. I went rolling down the street, doing my thing. Forgot about all that real quick. And then a couple weeks later, the deputy calls me. And he's like, did you not go to court? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, did you not go to court? And I was like, I didn't have a court. He's like, you did. He's like, now you have a warrant. And I'm like, oh. And I had been good about that, not having warrants, making sure I taking care of everything. And he's like, so where are you at? And I was like, and I was somewhere on Winton getting loaded with a friend. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you where I'm at. And he's like, well, I'll make a deal with you. And I said, okay, what's the deal? He's like, you come turn yourself into me right now. And we'll take care of everything. We'll go through the motions. We'll see, how much time you're going to do and all that. Or if you don't do that, I'm just going to show up at your mom's house on Christmas Day. Because Christmas was coming up. Yeah. And I'm all, really? I'm all, you would do that to me? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I know you'll be there. Or I'm going to keep you away. And I'm like, yeah, you would keep me away from my family. He's like, yeah. So what's your choice? It's your choice, your decision. And I said, well, fuck you. Catch me if you can. Try to find me.
Yeah.
And I hung up on him. And I think I had a little bit over an 8-ball of dope. And I just sat there just smoking with this dude. And I sat there thinking, I had prayed to God a few weeks earlier to give me a sign, to show me the path back to getting my life together again.
Yeah.
And I sat there thinking about it, and I was like, this is that sign. I'm like, okay, am I going to do this? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do this? And I called him back, and I said, where are you? And he's like, I'm on 8th Street and Hathaway at Costco.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'll be there in 20 minutes. And smoke some more dope, smoked like 10 cigarettes, and I drove over there. And he was parked right there where he said he was. He let me call my mom. She came and got my car. And then he took me to Santa Rita. The funny thing is, I always laugh about this now, is that I'm diabetic. So when I got there, they tested my blood sugar, and it was like 400.
Wow.
And they were like, oh, we can't take you.
Yeah.
You got to go to the hospital first. So we went to Valley Medical Care, and he was almost off. His shift was almost over.
Yeah.
Well,
He's got to sit with you now.
His shift got extended.
Yeah.
He had to sit with me at that hospital until
your blood sugar went down.
Which was funny because he has me handcuffed to a fucking bed, and I really wanted a cigarette so bad. And I'm watching these people. We're in the emergency room right by the door, and I could smell the smoke coming in from people smoking right outside the door. And I'm like, just take me outside. I'm like, you have my cigarettes. I'm like, take me outside. I'm all handcuffed. I don't care. I want to smoke. He's all, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm all, please, it's killing me. I need a cigarette. And he's all, I'll make a deal with you. He's like, you see all these people smoking out there? I'm like, yeah, I can smell it. And he's like, if you could get one of them to give you a cigarette, I'll take you outside. And I'm like, oh, easy. Not thinking that there's a deputy standing next to me. I'm handcuffed to a bed.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to get these people to stop. So I'm like, excuse me, can I get a cigarette? And they're just walking by me.
Yeah.
Looking at me like I'm nuts. And he's laughing. So he had to stay there with me for like almost 4.5 hours. And then take me to booking. And then he dropped me off there. Mm-hmm. I ended up going before the judge. And I was there for, I think, 6 days. 6 days. That last time was there for 6 days and got sentenced to an outpatient program that I had been to twice before.
How would you describe your relationship with that deputy, if you had to describe it?
It was, in my sick, twisted mind at the time, I was attracted to him because he's super handsome. He looks like Clark Kent, and I was like, it was like kind of fun to get fucked with by him because I would get to see him. But at the end, I was super thankful for him.
Yeah.
That I had that, I'm like, because at that point I was like, I was worried about being labeled a snitch because I had this close, because when I'd get stopped and I had somebody with me, they would see it and be like,
yeah,
what's going on? Something's weird. You guys are too friendly. And people would talk, and then, and that's why I would at the end, that last couple months, I retreated to myself because a lot of people were worried about that, and I was getting labeled that, and I didn't want to get hurt.
Yeah. I asked that question, though, because you said you asked for God, you prayed to God for a sign, and then this deputy calls you. So did you feel like that was my sign? Yeah, wow.
He was I'm today looking back at him, like, I don't know where he's at, if he still works for Alameda County.
Yeah.
But I'm thankful for him.
Yeah.
I'm 100% thankful for him, because if it wasn't for him constantly trying to get me to give people up or staying on me, constantly pulling me over, pulling me out of jail, doing all that stuff that he did, I might not have been tired enough to ask for help. And to ask God for help and for that to happen. Because once he took me in and I got out, like the last day I used meth was December 16th, 2011. I haven't touched I've been clean since. And I went to
Wow.
jail. And it's funny when you go to jail and you've been there a lot, the deputies at jail, they get to know you. When I walked in, I had these brand new pair of Jordans on. I won't ever forget that. I went it through booking, and when they take your shoes and everything, the deputy's like, Castro, you're back.
Yeah.
Oh, those are clean. And then he takes them off my feet.
Yeah.
And he's like, nice. He's like, oh, how long you here for this time? And I was just like, I'm like, don't talk to me. I'm like, not now. I'm like, you don't know me. Yeah, because I don't want, well, I was there. I wanted to be okay. But like, yeah, I knew I'd be okay. Because all the times I had been to, like the furthest I ever got in jail was Santa Rita.
Yeah.
And the longest I ever did was like 42 days. But I was always taken care of because I sold to Northerners.
Yeah.
So when I would get there, if I would see, I would always run into somebody I knew. And even though I was gay, they wouldn't believe me.
Yeah.
I would tell them. They would ask you. They ask you all those questions when they put you in there. I'm like, I am gay. No, you're not. Quit lying. Why would you want to go in there with them? We're putting you in blues, and always end up in blues instead of going in reds. And
never had to worry about it though. Huh?
Yeah, but I always had protection.
Yeah.
Like the people I would bunk with would always take care of me. So I got lucky, but yeah, once I turned myself into him and he got me to Santa Rita and I went through the process, went through court, the judge gave me a program. I was reluctant to go back to that same place that I had been before, twice. But I had to do a year. And if I did the year with no mess ups, no relapses, no dirty drug tests, complete the program, I would be done.
Yeah.
If I didn't, because I had gotten caught with an amount back then. Like if you got caught with a baggie with dust in it, it was a felony.
Yeah.
So I was looking at a possible felony, but they were putting me in treatment instead of charging me with that. I was looking at 3 years. But so it was Judge Pachetti. He retired, but he gave me, he put me at second chance. And I did that program. I'm like, okay. But I had made this decision that I'm tired. I'm done. I don't want to use it anymore.
Yeah.
I can't handle it anymore. It's just getting crazy. My mom said I could come back home, but I couldn't get loaded. Couldn't sell drugs. I had to do something. So I immersed myself in this program at Second Chance. And then just started that recovery process. And I can remember 63 days in, because they always say, look for the miracles. Because I would obsess about how am I going to take care of myself? How am I going to make money? Because I was used to doing it with drugs.
Yeah.
But after 60 something days, I was good. That obsession lifted. It went away. People started saying about Narcotics Anonymous, doing stuff like that. Started getting involved with that. But after my year, I completed a year with flying colors. I remember going to court and the judge was like, wow, you're doing really good.
Yeah.
You're doing really, really well. You're doing great.
That feels good to hear. Too.
Yeah. And I was like, cool. And this is okay, now I need to keep this up. I need to keep up. I need to keep moving forward. I need to keep, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Yeah, because that last run was not even a full year, almost. But I had used for so many years prior that trying to figure out exactly who I am, what I'm doing, what I'm supposed to do with this life. Now that I'm working on myself, and I had no ideas of exactly what to do. My pattern has always been get clean, get a really good job, relapse. This cycle that I had been on for years. But this time something changed. Went back to school. Decided to work in the field of recovery. And I can say that's a big part of why I don't go, one of the big parts of why I don't go back. And I think I've stayed clean for 12 years is because of my job. I work at the place that I got clean at.
Yeah.
And that to me has been this huge blessing that continues to give me everything that I need in my life and afford me the lifestyle that I have today.
Well, you're helping the people that were going through what you went through, right?
And it's funny because I started off at the center in Hayward where I sold drugs.
Yeah.
Like in the area, I sold drugs. So it's funny to run into people that I used to get loaded with. It's funny to see people I used to, sell to. And I remember the first couple of years working there, they would walk in and say, "Damn, you got clean? I thought you'd be tweaking forever."
Yeah.
And I'd be like, "Wow, really?" I'm like, "Damn." And I used to take offense to that because, like, my nickname when I was out there was Gay Tweaker Dan. And I didn't have a problem with that then. And then as I've gotten more clean time, I started thinking about it. I was like, I don't like that nickname. And now working and staying clean, I'm just Dan now.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm still gay, but I'm not a tweaker anymore. But just call me Dan. Yeah, and it's funny when I see people and they say that to me. Like in the beginning, when I started working there, they would say that to me, and I'd be like, "That's not my name. My name's Dan."
Yeah.
I'm like, I've left that behind, and it's funny because I get it. I totally get it. People think that that are currently in an addiction, that there's no way out. Mm-hmm. Like I remember getting there too, thinking in my head that this is it for me. I'm a guy that was sexually abused, that has been through all this horrible childhood trauma, that of course you became a drug addict, and you're never going to do anything better with yourself. And that I just better get used to this lifestyle of going in and out of jail. And one day I'll probably end up in prison.
Yeah. 12 years later.
Yeah. And then to have I have to remain super grateful in an attitude of gratitude, because just because I have 12 years doesn't mean that I can't relapse or that I can't get loaded again.
Yeah.
Because it's literally, I keep it in the back of my head, and I remember that last day that I turned myself in and all the pain that I went through. At 2 years clean, I was in my mom's neighborhood, and I ran into that deputy. I literally almost ran into him. Uh-huh. I was backing up. I almost hit him. And I looked and I was like, whoa. I was like, hey. And I just remember being so proud to tell him, I got 2 years clean.
Yeah.
I got 2 years clean.
He's probably proud of you too. Yeah.
And just to be so happy about that. And little did I know that where I'm at today is to be able to help people get what I have. Mm-hmm. To be part of a community of Narcotics Anonymous, to continue to spread the word, the message that people can change, people get healthy. But, life has a funny way of working out sometimes. I use so much meth, and so much of it, for so many years, that it's taken a toll on me mentally, mm-hmm. emotionally, and now with my health. So it's my father has kidney disease.
Okay.
So I inherited that kidney disease from my dad, not knowing any of that. But a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I was told, because now I go to a doctor. I'm always visiting my doctor regularly and all that. So I went in for blood work a couple of years ago, and he found some stuff, and he referred me to a kidney doctor. And he was like, yeah, just go see the kidney doctor, see what they say to you. Yeah, I've seen some stuff on your blood work.
Yeah.
So come to find out, I have kidney disease. Because of my drug use, mine accelerated. So it's a big shock to hear that you have stage 4 kidney disease, and that you're going to need you're either going to have to go on dialysis, or you're going to need a kidney transplant.
Wow.
And I'm 45 years old.
Yeah.
So it's a funny thing about using meth. It's I lost all the weight and was sucked up while I was using. But then when I would I had those period of clean times, I'd gain all this weight back and get big. And the biggest I was 350 pounds. And then drop it all again. It was so unhealthy.
It's rough.
That diabetes,
Yeah.
that came into my life. And then the diabetes, along with the up and down with the meth use, the kidney disease just went from 0 to 30 real quick.
Your body's going haywire.
Yeah, not knowing what to do. So that's where I'm at today. And it's funny because I'm doing everything right. I'm like, I have a really good job. I'm working at the place that I got clean at. I'm of service to my community through Narcotics Anonymous. I have a sponsor. I have a sponsee. I have a huge support system. I'm doing all the right things. And then, bam, you get hit with, okay, well, sooner than later, you're going to need a kidney transplant or you're going to have to go on dialysis. And I'm like, oh, boom.
Yeah.
And then the first thing that came to my head, this is how sick, it doesn't matter how much clean time you get. The first thing I thought was, well, fuck it. I'm going to die anyways. Let's just go get loaded. It'll be easier.
Wow.
It'll be easier. And I was at this kidney doctor appointment all by myself. Didn't bring anybody with me because I didn't expect to hear all that. And then just sitting there in the parking lot in my car in tears. And I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then I just went to my mom's house, which thank God, because that helped process through that want to get loaded, that I don't give a fuck attitude. That's so dangerous for me. Yeah. So now that's where we're at. People are like, whoa, you have to get a kidney transplant? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm actively like, I'm almost there. I'm like, I was given the task of losing, let's see, when I was 273. I'm down to 238. I got like 2 more pounds to go. But I have 2 living donors that are willing to give me a kidney. One of them is my niece. One of them is my real good friend. They're both doing blood work. One of them has the next step. He has to talk to the psych doctor to make sure he's mentally there for it. But we're moving right along. Because I'm trying to avoid having to do dialysis. But I think back and I'm like, damn. I'm like, they don't tell you that when you get loaded.
Yeah.
When you start using the hard stuff, that this is what this could do to you. This could literally kill you. And like, even though I'm clean, I'm paying for it today.
And even if they do tell you, it can almost have an adverse effect, right? Like you said, well, screw it. I'm going to die anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, that can happen to a lot of people, right?
Yeah. It's scary. It's scary it was hard in the beginning. I think the biggest word I try to focus on today is acceptance. Mm-hmm. I have worked on acceptance of who I am, of what's happened to me, where I came from, what decisions I've made in the past, why I'm where I'm at today. But then dealing with having to, let's check that, getting to deal with what I'm dealing today and accepting the fact that, this is part of my story.
Uh-huh.
And then building off of that. Like today, I'd want to say, I'm not going to die. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to get a kidney transplant. Even if I have to do dialysis for a month or 2, we're going in the right direction. And then it's going to force me to take a look at my life physically and what can I do to physically improve my life, because I'm doing all that now. And it's just it's like I used for so many years, and now this is what it's come to.
Yeah.
And
a long-term effect.
I can either be really, really sad about it and throw myself on the ground and, not take care of my mental health around this and my emotional health and keep it to myself, or I can share it with my family and with my loved ones and my friends and be supported by them and be loved on by them and get through this. Because my sponsor asked me the other day, he's like, how do you feel about this? Are you okay? Do you, I'm like, since him and I have talked about it, I'm like, I'm fine. I'm like, I'm like, yeah, I have some fear. Anybody would have fear about a transplant. I'm like, I think it's scary. Any surgery to me is scary. And this is a major one. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I choose life. I did not stop using drugs and do what I do today, and all that to not to fight harder to get the rest of my life back.
Of course. Yeah.
I gave up so much of my life for drugs And for that lifestyle for so many years, that it's like it's every day is a fight to make sure that I get to keep my life and enjoy my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's funny because I don't have any signs of stage 4 kidney disease. I'm getting constantly checked on, and my doctor, she's so funny. She constantly reminds me. She's like, "You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine." And she's like, she always, and she has this really thick, I want to say like Bulgarian accent, that you didn't get clean to die. You're going to get better. You're going to get better. And I look at that and I'm like, this lady who doesn't know my full story, she knows most of it. I'm completely honest with my doctors about my past so they can help me. She has all the faith in the world, but even I struggle with that today. And then that's a hard one. It's like keeping that faith and believing that my God, my higher power, has a plan.
Yeah.
And I don't look at my drug use and all the stuff that I did in my addiction as a waste. It was all bringing me to something. And I look at the work that I get to do. I've worked at my job for 10 years and I've helped a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I work more in a management position now, supervising both agencies, and get to bring people on today that get to do what I got to do back when I started. And just to keep those doors open, because my job, literally, that agency saved my life, along with countless others who have been a big part of my story. Like my mom, mm-hmm. I get to make her proud.
Yeah.
Like I always used to say to her, because she would get together with my aunts and be like, "What do you tell my aunts about me when I was using?" Yeah. Like you probably were like, "Please don't bring up the kid. Please don't bring up." But now it's like you get to. I give her something to brag about, and I love being able to, because my mom she literally just retired. I love to be able to take her and pay for things. Yeah. Because she never asked, and she would always shell out money for me and always pay for this, pay for that. That relationship that I have with her today is super solid. And then with my sisters, it's there. We get to love on each other with their kids. But and then you have my dad. Like his birthday was a couple days ago. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting in my room and I was like, "Oh shit, it's his birthday." I didn't call him. And I'm like, "Oh, well, no big deal." So I said, "Oh, can you shoot him a text?" So I shot him a text and I said, "Happy birthday, Dad." And then I put a heart emoji on it. And then the phone rang and it was him.
Yeah.
And he called me back and I'm like, "Yes." And he's like, "Thank you." I'm like, "Oh," I'm like, "You're welcome. Happy birthday. I hope you had a good day." He's like, yeah. And again, I don't talk to my dad often. Mm-hmm. It's sporadic. And I don't tell him about he knows about my kidney stuff, but he doesn't know where I'm at with it.
Yeah.
But he does talk to my sisters. So he brought that up and he's like, "I just want to know that you're okay. Where are you going to be at? Like, what's the next step?" And I was like, "Oh, somebody's been talking to you." And he's like, "Well, you don't talk to me." I'm like, "Yeah." And I told him straight up, I was like, "Because I don't want your sympathy. I don't need it." And he's like, "What does that mean?" And I was like, "I don't need your sympathy." I was like, that's why I don't tell people about it. I'm like, because I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I was like, I'm doing everything I can to make sure I'm going to be okay. I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. But at the end of the day, I'm like, it's going to be, I have to pull myself through this with the help of everybody else and with the help of my mom.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Okay." And
have you forgiven your father?
Say it again.
Have you forgiven your father?
I've had to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had to. Do step work with my sponsor. Mm-hmm. I went through counseling in high school because of it. But mostly through step work. I couldn't carry that burden with me anymore and expect to stay clean.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, he has to live with it, as well as I do. But I've processed it. I've talked to my mom about it. my sisters, and people always say that know me, that I've talked to about it. How can your family have a relationship with him? I'm like, I have no control over what my siblings do or what my nieces and nephews do. If they want to have a relationship with him, so be it. That's on them. That's good. I have a relationship with him too. It's not a close one. It's a phone conversation. I avoid him. I don't make plans to go hang out with him. And him and his wife, they live in the valley.
Yeah.
And I live in the Bay Area. So I'm like, I don't make it a point to hang out with him. And then it's funny because every time he calls, the few times I do talk to him, it's always sad. He's very sad. He's a very sad man. He's like, you can hear it in his voice. And he's older. He's in his late 70s.
Yeah.
But he made that decision to do what he did with me. I think I have the right to have the kind of relationship I want to have with him today, whatever that looks like. But forgiveness was a must, because if I didn't, I would still be carrying around the guilt, the shame, the wonder,
a reason to do something that you
because for me, if I stubbed my toe, I got loaded.
Yeah.
And to be able to work through that with the sponsor, and even in a group of my sponsee brothers, has been amazing, because my dad, that's his journey. I can't force, I can make it super uncomfortable for him and bring it up and be like, why? But am I ready to?
But the uncomfortable part of it is for you too, right?
Yeah. How do you bring that up?
Keep doing it, and you're doing this to yourself as well.
And if I don't get the answers that I want or expect or anything out of it, I'm just left to deal with that hurt and that pain again.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's like, it is what it is. It happened to me. I don't know why it happened to me, but it did. I can't go back and change it. So I can help other people who have been through it. Because I think the hardest thing about something like that, especially when it's your own father, is the being able to talk about it. A lot of people wouldn't want to talk about that. And I'll go a step even further. It's did I enjoy it? Did I like it? Because I like guys. Did I enjoy the stuff we did? And when I would go there in that space in my head, I would get worried. I'd be like, wow, because then that makes me a weirdo. But then as I've gotten older and worked on myself and realized that how wrong it was, and not knowing any better, because I can, we were talking about earlier, that led to so many different experiences with sex at such an early age that I look at, I have a 15-year-old niece, and I can't even imagine her right now doing what I was doing at my age, even younger than her. Because I look at her now and she's so pure and she's so school focused, and so she has a boyfriend, but she knows her limits. And to think that at such a young age, those limits or those things were taken away from me. That to me, sex was confused with, oh, okay, well, if you want me to like you, you got to do this. So,
wow. Well, Dan, this story was amazing. I mean, you obviously went through. I mean, I guess you could say you went through hell, and you pulled yourself out of it. I mean, it's amazing to think that, this is important for people to hear the part of it where you got clean for a year, months, a year, 3 years, and then you fell back into that addiction again, and it was like starting all over and even worse. So this is something important for people to hear that are dealing with that. Like, when you make that choice to clean up, just know that if you do decide to relapse, it's probably going to be worse than it was before you went into that recovery, right?
Yes.
So I really appreciate you coming out here and sharing that story with us. And, come back and talk to us anytime, man. You can talk to us.
I appreciate you. Thank you for bringing me down here. I appreciate that.